Think about the hardest, most difficult times in your life. It was hell when you were going through it. You wish you wouldn't wake up the next day, or you wish you got really ill so you could take a month off work. Going through pain, suffering, or trauma is part of life, but it is necessary. If we had an easy life with no significant ups and downs, you'd be drinking from your mother's tits your whole life, sponging off your parents, and not developing a maturity later on in life. Men need hard times. Hard times build strong men. There is one thing that makes a difference when it comes to suffering. The single most important thing you can do to grow mentally, and that is to have a positive mental attitude. This can be the difference from learning from your suffering or suffering eternally. With this skill, your life will only improve, as of people who do not have this skill will suffer forever. If you are suffering right now, I'm happy for you. I'm saying this because I care about you and your journey. If I didn't care, I would want you to stay in that job. I would want you to stay with that girl that treats you like shit. This will be a test for you to know if you have the right mental attitude. Pain is inevitable, but suffering is a choice. Let me say that again. Pain is inevitable, but suffering is a choice. For example, I cannot do anything about my mum getting the disease Alzheimer's, but I can change the way I look at it. I used to think, I'm losing my mum. She's going to forget who I am. Making myself suffer that pain over and over again for 2 years straight, this was my mindset. Until I got to the point in my life where I was missing time with her by working more than I was living. From the point of diagnosis, I knew I had limited time left with my mum, eventually making me realise I had to think differently about this situation. Now I think I can spend that time I have left with her laughing and enjoying myself with her. It's easy to fall back into a negative mindset. You have to have resilience when it comes to controlling your mind and thoughts. And one way you can build a resilient mind is to change the perspective on how you see pain. I'm thankful I was slapped when I was younger. I'm thankful I worked a shitty job working 12-hour nights. I'm thankful I broke up with that girl after a 3-year relationship. I'm thankful I was a fat twat who couldn't see his own dick. These moments ruined me and tested me. They made me who I am today. I don't regret anything. These moments led me to my fuck this event moment in my life. I knew I wasn't a worker for someone else. I knew this girl wasn't for me. I knew the way I was living was slowly killing me. The pain and suffering leads to that much depressing of the emotion. It gets too much and takes you to the point you realise enough is enough. I can't live like this anymore. I need to change. My life needs to change. You get so low, the only way is up. Ever since I made that decision to leave that job, to leave that girl, to start training harder in the gym, to see my mum's disease in a more positive light, my life has gone up drastically. From that point onwards, pain was only temporary. I knew it would be over soon and there would be a lesson I was to learn from it, making the pain in the moment significantly less painful. Suffering is painful at the time, but if you have the mentality that good times are coming when it is over, then you will no doubt improve and that suffering won't be as painful. Without that pain or suffering, you would not have learned about yourself the way you did. The only thing about suffering is it has to be just enough to push you over the edge for it to make a change. Think about successful people you hear on podcasts, and I'm going to use Diary of a CEO for example. Every single one of them has had trauma or painful experiences. Their dad was an aggressive alcoholic, or they were sniffing cocaine with their mum at the age of 14. These are more on the extreme ends of the scale of painful experiences, but they had a positive mindset to learn from that pain rather than choosing to suffer eternally, and to do everything in their willpower to create a better life. You can too. It starts by changing your perspective. Currently you haven't got the body you want, but if you stay consistent, it will no doubt come in time, and then when you are jacked, you'll be thinking, fuck me, I'm sexy. If you're in the sweet spot that you're just making enough to live the life that keeps you satisfied, or your girl's sucking your dick to keep you happy, you will never get a fuck this event moment. You really don't enjoy where you are, but it will do. It's comfortable, it makes just the right amount of money, it's safe, it's not scary, it'll do. A fuck this event moment is where you can't take the situation you are in any longer. It shifts your mindset and you think, fuck this, I can live differently. I can't work this job. I can't be with this girl. You do everything to make that happen, sometimes without even thinking it through. But the amount of discomfort and suffering it leads you to moving mountains, no matter the effort. A fuck this event isn't one of them moments you say fuck this and you call in sick for a day, or you book the week off and next week you go back and work again. This is more like a fuck this moment. It's just not enough for you to make extreme amounts of change in your life, and it can make a slight change for, say, like a couple of weeks, maybe a month if you're lucky, but it's not enough to make you keep going. Eventually you fall back into living just as you was, and the cycle continues. Suffering is a test to know if you are cut out for the challenges you are going to face. My lowest point in my life was about 2 years ago. I hated my job, I broke up with my girl that I mentioned earlier, my tide passed away, and my mum got diagnosed with Alzheimer's. And we kind of knew that it was coming about because her mother had it before. But after their diagnosis, they are given 4 to 8 years of being like a normal human, being able to function, you know. A few months go by and I'm working on nights, and I'm just driving on my own, back and to doing the same thing all night. I have about 4 hours sleep after my 12-hour shift, living alone, and that was hard, going from 3 months up until the point that we broke up. Me and this girl broke up. We were basically living together, seeing each other every day, going back to each other's houses, and finally we moved out together and I got a mortgage, and we would live together up until that point we broke up. The last year of living together, we had a lot of ups and downs. We were both very insecure. Say we'd go out with our friends, drinking or something, and we would argue, and one of us would end up going home before 10 o'clock. Like, we would never stay out because there would always be an argument. We'd always be arguing about some little insecurity. You looked at him wrong, or he looked at me wrong. I don't know, whatever. It was a mess, basically. But anyway, we were together for a long time, every day, and going from that to living on my own was really painful. My family lived about 10 minutes away, but I was too embarrassed of the way I was living and how I thought. I kept myself to myself for a long time. Until that moment, I went to my doctors and asked for some time off work. I got 2 months off work. And during that 2 months, I went up a mountain known as Molshebod with my 2 sisters. That day changed my life. That was the first ever hike I've been on. It was the start of a new life. I really didn't want to go at this time. They wanted to get up really early, and I'll tell you what this day did for me. So I'm going to have to explain how my job worked and everything, just so you get this story. I worked 4 on, 4 off shift. So I worked for 4 days, got 4 days off. Out of 7 weeks, I got 3 weekends to myself. Sometimes I'd have to work overtime. So out of them 7 weeks, I would have to work 6 weekends during the week as well. So I was doing about 72 hours a week, working from, say, Monday up until Sunday morning, 6 a.m. So I was starting work 6 a.m. Monday morning, finishing work Sunday morning, 6 a.m. So that 7th week, I'd get my weekend, and then another 4 weeks go by, and I wouldn't see a weekend up until 11 weeks have gone by. So my family are, normal people. They work Monday to Friday. So when I was working the weekends, I couldn't see them. And this was the only time I could really spend time with them, quality time with them. And so what this day did for me during my break and when I went for a walk with my sisters, during that 6 hours of spending time in nature, I realised that day that working for someone else just wasn't going to cut it for me. Someone telling me when I could and couldn't work. I was missing time with my brother, sisters, my dad, but most importantly my mum, who we didn't even know how long she had left. So after my 2 months off, I went back to work for a month, decided to get some money, and finally quit. I rented out my house, I moved back in with my family and started working with my dad. I chose to stay working there. I was earning more than minimum wage. I had a house to myself. I chose to suffer and sacrifice my mental and physical health. My mental attitude towards my situation was negative. I can't find a job that pays as well as this one. I can hardly save money now. I can't move back home. I've got all the freedom I want here. This way of thinking made me suffer more than I needed to do. But I'm glad I went through that. And you might be thinking I'm fucked for saying that, but I'm so happy and glad that I went through that. I'm grateful for the suffering I've been through. Not only did it make me realise everything I didn't want in life, it also gave me the experience to be able to share my knowledge and experience with you. Think about that time you broke up with your ex and that period after your whole mindset shifts and you think this is the time to get work done in the gym. This is time to get back in shape and get shit done. That's exactly what happened to me. I needed my mindset shifted to correct my life trajectory in the right direction. I hope you suffer now you have the knowledge to look at it from a different perspective. You can grow rather than suffer. Thank you for listening if you made it this far. Out of suffering, the strong souls have emerged. Do what needs to be done, not what you feel like doing. I hope you suffer. Now you have the knowledge to look at it from a different I hope you suffer. Now you have the knowledge to look at it from a different perspective. I hope you suffer. Now you have the knowledge to look at it from a different perspective. I hope you suffer. Now you have the knowledge. I hope you suffer. Now you have the knowledge to look at it from a different perspective. I hope you suffer. Now you have the knowledge to look at it from a different perspective.